Welcome, everyone, to Textiles and Tea with the Handweavers Guild of America. I'm Kathy Group. I'm the advertising manager, and I get to be your host today. We want to thank Myrna Lindstrom for being a sponsor for today's Textiles and Tea. Myrna is one of our Textiles and Tea angels. She comes in and sponsors us from time to time. Thank you, Myrna. We appreciate it. We hope you'll enjoy the show today. As always, we will take questions for the last 15 minutes of the program. Please put them in the Q&A and not in the chat. I can't see them in the chat. We love your comments, though. Keep those coming. Those are great. Today, we have Meagan Smith with us. Meagan is an interdisciplinary fiber artist that lives and works in Cleveland, Ohio. She is specifically interested in the combination of craft, design, and technology. She received her BFA from the University of Akron in painting in 2015 and an MFA in textiles at Kent State University. She recently had a solo show at the Capacity Contemporary in Louisville, Kentucky, a two-person show at Ohio State University, and participated in the Young Textile Art Triennial at the Central Museum of Textiles in Poland. She has been interviewed by the Collective Arts Network and Canvas Cleveland. Smith attended artist residence in Japan, Norway, Iceland. She's a recipient, of course, of the Handweavers Guild of America Scholarship, the Surface Design Association's Creative Promise Award, and the ARPA Cuyahoga Arts and Crafts Grant. Her work is part of the permanent collection at the Summa Health Behavioral Center and is included in private collections. Hey, Meagan.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Thank you for being here today.
Yeah, thank you for introducing me.
But we're going to start off with a big question. What is your favorite tea?
I like peppermint tea and ginger tea. Ginger turmeric, probably.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I do. I like the zanginess.
Do you combine them?
Sometimes I do.
Do you really?
Yeah, I do.
So tell us how you got started in fiber.
Yeah, so I came from the University of Akron from the painting program, and while I was there, being a painter, I was looking at a lot of different artists' work. Eva Hesse was someone who I really loved and who was probably one of my biggest inspirations starting off. And she worked with fiber materials, and she was just an artist that I could relate to and inspired me to kind of pull out the sewing machine. And I started ripping apart my paintings and sewing them back together. And it really worked for me and introduced me to thread and just the language of a line and what that could do, just the dimensionality that it has and the possibilities that, it could have gesturally rather than using like a paintbrush. So that's what kind of guided me into fiber in the very beginning. So yeah.
Now, were you one of those kids that did great in art in grade school and high school?
Oh yeah.
Were you?
Yeah, I loved it. I actually came from a private I went to like a private Catholic high school, and they had an oil painting program. And so
Wow.
I like always had painting and drawing, was very interested in that growing up. Mm-hmm.
Well, this first work we're going to look at is the Hardanger Forge. And it's talking about painting. I think you can see the painterly quality in this work. There's a real influence there. Mm-hmm. So is there a relationship between your background in painting and the love of the TC2?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think just, my background in painting, this is actually hand dyed. So I'm mixing colors while I'm painting on the warp, which is the vertical axis. Those of you that don't know kind of weaving terminology. But there's definitely a relationship between painting and weaving for sure. Weaving brings a structure to painting that I didn't have before, and just something to kind of respond to and to bounce off of. And that was something that I really struggled with painting, and it all kind of made sense for me when bringing that kind of skill to weaving. And also, yeah, gave it a little bit more, I would say, of a grounding. Yeah, they definitely have a strong relationship with each other and inform one another. I think the painting breaks up, it gives weaving some spontaneity and surprises that if I didn't use a painted method, that it wouldn't have the same kind of changing field that
Mhm.
like this piece does. So
Well, I should have asked this question before we started, but we've had a run lately on TC2 artists. Can you briefly, for those who are watching who don't know what a TC2 is, would you briefly give us an explanation of that?
yeah, so the TC2, it's a jacquard loom. So jacquards, they help lift all of the warp threads versus like a hand loom where you're operating the loom by just using your hands or a stick. But like a jacquard loom is controlled by harnesses. So this loom, all the threads are individually controlled. So you can make really complex images and high resolution images and work with multiple patterns simultaneously versus, you know, the floor loom, like what I have behind me. You're kind of limited to however many shafts you have on the loom. So I like working with multiple patterns that are complex, and I think that's the benefit of, you know, my work being on a TC2 loom versus a jacquard loom. So I use the two looms for different purposes. This is actually, I'm doing a tapestry weaving on this loom behind me. But yeah, so the threads are individually controlled. They're computer controlled, but you're still manually operating the loom, and you're putting in whatever weft threads that you want to with the TC2. So there's still a sense of hand presence in the weaving when you're working on a TC2, especially if you're working with like a painted warp, for example. And I think that makes it all the more fun.
We're going to talk more about that in a minute too.
Yeah.
Now, this next work, I just fell in love with this. This work is just so amazing in so many different ways. So we're going to talk a little bit about all kinds of things in this work. So
Okay.
let's start off with the shape of it. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
most weaving is, you know, straight on one side, straight on the other side, straight on the ends. And you would just talk about why this shape, what did this shape mean for you?
Yeah, like what you said, I think that was um something that I always wanted to explore in weaving was like a third dimension to it, because I was kind of struggling with two-dimensional weavings, and I wanted to make them pop out in space. And so I started to use, you know, optical mixing, and was looking at artists like Bridget Riley and Julian Stanchek and these painters that were trying to create the illusion, optical illusion of 3D space. And I was really attracted to that. And I was like, well, what if the space actually came out like a wave would, rather than just giving the optical effect, or if it could do both, like actually come out into space in a three-dimensional way, and also two-dimensionally give the illusion that it is coming out into space. So cutting the weaving itself, that was really kind of groundbreaking for my work, because it just feels kind of sacrilegious to do. Yeah, I remember in grad school, I cut into one of my weavings, and I think it was just the frustration of it, you know, the weaving being an object and everyone looking at it just as an object, and not as an actual two-dimensional
Mhm.
piece itself. I don't know, I just think that craft and weaving gets looked at differently than it does with painting and other mediums. But anyway, yeah, I cut it because I wanted it to flow with the composition, so that it's not locked in and it's kind of more continuous. And it's responding to the composition that's in the structure and the patterns that are happening on the inside. And I'm like, well, why, if I have all these wavy patterns, why does it have to be contained? You know, can it have that same energy or dynamic movement that the actual like meat of it has? So that's why
Somebody's already asking, what is the size of this piece? Oh, I think we've lost her. If you haven't noticed, the three images are the same piece, and that she broke it up so we could see all three. And hopefully we'll get back with her in just a minute.
Hopefully she can leave and come back. I know there's a lot of storms and rain.
That the hurricane that's coming through and so anyway, I wanted to ask her more about this. I thought she wove it with this way. And I guess if you look at it closer, you can see, and then she said she cut it. And if you look at right here, you can really see where she cut it and then, did the end so it wouldn't ravel. But so I thought that was pretty interesting. I've never used a TC2. And if you want more information, or you want to see the TC2, go to last week's program. We had Lori Carlson Stager on here, and we even actually showed images of a TC2 loom. So if you want, go back to last week's and you can see what a TC2 looks like. It's like a box with a loom on the front of it, but it gives you a better idea of what she was talking about and how this is done. TC2 rule, somebody likes TC2. So it was interesting to hear what she could and couldn't do with this piece. Could she weave it that edge that way, or did she have to cut it off? So it sounds like she chose to cut it off on this one. So, well, while we're waiting for her to come back, I do want to remind everybody that we got a bunch of stuff coming up soon. Hard to believe. We just got back from Convergence and now we're roaring into the next thing. And that we've had people asking us about Spinning and Weaving Week. If you're interested in teaching, you can still apply. So we are still taking applications for people to teach. And then if you're interested in being a sponsor or a advertiser or have a booth, because you do have the virtual booths at Spinning and Weaving Week, you can do that right now. And if you have questions, go to our website and you can see a lot of information, or give us a call and we'll be glad to talk to you about that. But we're always looking for some really neat Art Spark classes to be taught. I was talking with somebody about it today who does the little tiny looms, and she does some amazing work. So I asked her if she'd be interested in teaching. It'd be good to have some more information about that. So go online, you can do that. You can see information, and you can sign up now. And for those of you who just wanted to attend, it's $30. It's a steal. It's an absolute steal. It's $30. You have to pay a little more if you want to take a class, but it includes the tours, the thread talks. You can see all the vendors, and it's a week, 7 whole days, and it's recorded. You can watch it for 90 days afterwards. So it's really a good deal. And we find that sometimes we start to introduce our new up and coming Convergence teachers through Spinning and Weaving Week. Not all of them. There's a lot of well-known teachers there too. But so if you're interested, give us a call. If you have questions, we'll be glad to talk to you about that. And then we'll let you know how to get going with that. I'm not sure where she went. I hope we don't lose her. I want to hear more about her work. I know that one of the things we're going to talk about is she does internship on the internships, and we've mentioned that in her bio, the grants that she has gotten. And I know she went to Japan for a while. She's gone to Norway. And I just can't imagine how you can go someplace like that and it just not impact on where your work goes from there. And so we're going to hear some more about that. The other thing that's really cool is for those of you who been watching the Olympics, who hasn't, right? She was a swimmer at Ohio, up in Akron. And I didn't realize it, but as I started talking to her and reading about that she was a swimmer, I could see that in her work. And I think you'll all see it too, that kind of the waves. And maybe it was just that I've been seeing swimming all week. I don't know, but I'm interested in talking to her more about that too. Oh, this is a great idea. For while we're waiting, put in the chat who you'd like to see on Textiles and Tea. I would love to hear that. I'm always telling people to email me and tell me because you know people we don't know, right? You know artists that are out there that we probably haven't seen yet. And we're really looking for the up and coming artist that maybe don't have the notoriety yet, but that would be great. That we would love to hear from you all. Who do you want to see? We had a bunch of people that I met in Convergence that I thought, I want to, and some of the works in the show. Yeah, I want to talk to people about how they did that. And that was the neat thing about talking with Lori Carlson Stager, because she did have a piece in the show, and hearing how her and we got Megan. Unmute yourself, dear. Can you unmute yourself?
Yeah,
There
can
you
you hear
are.
me?
Yeah.
So sorry about that. Oh my
Are you
gosh.
on your
The
phone
picture-
now?
Yes, I'm on my phone. My the lights in my studio were like flickering and going out, and I hear like pouring rain. So it must.
Can you turn your phone?
Yeah. I
And then we
turn
can
it.
see a little more of you. There. Wonderful.
Yeah.
It was just as good as before you left. Well, I've told everybody about you, so the show's over and we're going to stop now. So yeah, I've told everybody what you do and everything. So
Oh, okay, great. Then I'll just sign off.
yeah. All right, let's go back to I think we were at Title Path and we were finishing up with that. And we were talking, somebody wanted to know the size of Title Path.
So it's kind of tricky. The actual size of the weaving itself is like 23 or 24 feet long, but
Really?
with
Wow.
yeah, but with its functionality and the shelving, it shrinks the size of what we're looking at right now. So it's 18 feet. The way looking at now, this image, it's 18 feet with the shelf that it's on, but the actual weaving itself is like 24 feet. But with the curves, you have to accommodate extra feet yardage for that.
Now,
to make it dimensional.
did you weave the whole thing at once, or is it pieced together? Is it sewn together?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. It was originally going to be 4 sections, different weavings, but as I was weaving it, I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna make this a 24-foot weaving, and I'm not gonna stop. Like, this is just going to be one huge piece. So yeah, I had just I made this actually in Iceland last summer at the Icelandic textile residency, and I was preparing for a 2-person show that was in the fall at Ohio State University. And this piece, I was thinking about the time of day and the light and what the color looks like throughout different times of the day and what the movement kind of looks like when it interacts with the color. So the far left side is kind of the morning. And then as you move to the middle, it's the afternoon. Then it becomes sunset, and then midnight is on the far right side. So that was kind of the what I was thinking about when choosing these colors and when creating the forms for this piece.
Well, we're going to go on to the next one.
Yep.
Oh, well, before I want to talk, you've talked some about designing and talk a little bit more about that. When you design, like you said, you were going to do 4 separate pieces and then you started working on it, and then boom, you said, nope, let's just stay with one piece. Do you like draw everything out at the time? Do you do it out on a computer? I know you have to use a computer with TC2, but how do you design your work?
Yeah, so I have a library of structures and graphic forms, waves, for example, and it's basically like collaging. So I do collaging in Photoshop. I also draw waves in Procreate. So I'm drawing a lot of like swoopy kind of gestural marks, and I'm taking those graphic marks that I made in Procreate that were hand drawn, and I put them in Photoshop, and then I kind of overlay them with woven patterns. So like undulating twills or diagonal twills or whatever kind of active dynamic structure I'm drawn to for creating that composition. I kind of interface that with the graphic form that I made in Procreate, and then I collage it together with whatever other forms that I'm working with. And it's kind of a back and forth with looking in my library at what I have and making new forms, and also simultaneously thinking about color, which can be kind of tricky because you have to think, oh, well, if I have a yellow warp and a red weft, and I'm using you know, a warpy satin or a wefty satin, is that going to be a, you know, a warmer orange, or is it going to be kind of a cooler orange? Or I have to think about that too, and I do simulations in Photoshop for that. So it's not totally a one-to-one. It changes because the warp is painted and I don't, you know exactly what the warp is going to look like when it's, you know, 60 EPI or 30 EPI threads across the loom. I can't totally plan for that. So I, you know, do what I know in Photoshop, and then it kind of takes turns as I'm weaving, and colors will change. And so the design process, it's not totally a straight shot and linear like that. It's kind of constantly changing and going back while I'm weaving and making it shifts. So yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I make very many things that don't change along the way. It's like,
Mhm.
either I'm bored, I want to do something different, or, you know, I think this really would look better if I did something different. So that's good to know.
Yeah.
This next one is called Vertigo Go. And
Vertigo.
the movement and the energy in this thing is just amazing. And I was curious, Mandy's going to bring that up in a minute. I was curious, is that kind of energy in your work something that you really purposely work toward? Is it something that just naturally comes out whether you want it to or not?
I think it's both. I have very I just have a taste for really strong contrasting colors. I love contrast, and I like colors that activate you optically, and just activate your senses really. So I am looking for that, but at the same time, I'm kind of putting my own sensory experience into the weavings through color. And it's titled Vertigo Go because I actually had vertigo making this piece or right before making this piece.
Oh my.
Yeah, when I made this last year, and I think it was from traveling to getting to Iceland to make this, but it kind of reflects a little bit of how I was feeling when after making this. But yeah, I definitely look for kind of hyperactive artificial coloring, colors that really just strike you and stop you, and that are, I don't know, super aggressive or also super pleasing and satisfying to look at. Like I really like the heightened kind of emotion that you're able to get from these colors and from these forms too. I think it kind of does something to me when I'm making them. And yeah, I really, enjoy that specific type of movement. And I think that's why it continues to reoccur in my work, because it's just really relatable, not only emotionally, but, to my own personal experience too, of being in the water and being a swimmer. And that just dynamic energy is something I'm always seeking.
It's interesting you brought up color, because this next image I fell in love with, if for a variety of reasons, but the color in this, and I read somewhere that you said you like colors that make you vibrate inside, and this is a great example of that, I think.
Yeah.
So this is called Flip and Turn, and it just shows the intensity of the colors that you chose. So talk some about this piece, if you would.
Yeah. the title of this piece, Flip, Flip and Turn, like I mentioned previously, I come from a swimming background. I used to be a competitive swimmer. So the bodily, the motion of flipping underwater, it's essentially this motion with this piece. You're rotating your entire body, flipping it upside down, and then you're pushing off the wall. That's what a flip turn is called in the sport of swimming. And also, technically, like in Photoshop, in the realm of Photoshop, flip and turn is a command option in one of the when you want to transform a shape, you can ask it to flip and turn or flip and rotate the shape. So I was like, oh, there's kind of a wordplay there, not only with the structure, but metaphorically, there's a connection, I think, with the flipping and turning of a shape and of a body, and flipping and turning in a space that is, is moving you. You're moving with technology. I think it really captures that that sense of rotating yourself, or feeling rotated and moving and kind of undulating through those two spaces. So a physical space, but also a virtual space. So yeah, definitely.
I mean, it's wonderful we can see the images, but you just want to see them in person, right? You just want to see them in person. And one of the things everybody's asking about, and I'm curious too, the insert, is that a separate piece or is it one piece?
When you say insert, do you mean the
square in the middle? Yeah.
Oh, so that's a vinyl kind of reproduction of the image that was created, another weaving that was created in Photoshop. So when I put those two things together, I think it's interesting to see one kind of blend or contrast from the other. But they're definitely talking to each other for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
The thing I liked about that piece is that you did the dyeing of the warp, right? So you're a dyer also?
Sorry,
you're a dyer also?
Yeah. So I do dyeing for most all of my weavings. It's all hand dyed. So,
and I always have to ask people when they come on and they're dyers, because, and I always get a million different reasons, but it's a lot of work to dye your warp. You really could just go buy it from the store, right? So, and everybody has their own reason why they want to dye. So why is that important for you?
I think there's something really magical about dyeing and something kind of unexpected about it that feeds into my work. I do have a general idea of what the color is going to look like, but it never really comes out exactly the color that I want it to be, like a tube of paint. And I think there's some fun in that, just with the blending and just the not knowing, and also there is a sense of control with it too, with the brush and where you get to place the mark or the paint. And I am also attracted to just the labor of it too. I like that aspect of weaving, and I know that I'll admit that.
Well, while you were off the air, I talked about how you were a swimmer in college. And I just thought it was so interesting that this last 2 weeks, we've seen so much swimming on the Olympics. And when I read that about you, it just kind of went, oh yeah, I really saw how your designs incorporate that. I could see the waves in the work that you do.
Thank you. Yeah, it's definitely something I'm trying to evoke is the water, or the sensory experience of being immersed in the water. But a lot of that definitely translates to my weavings, being a swimmer, having that specific technique or rhythm or kind of structure of going back and forth. It's very parallel to what I do now. And when I stopped being a swimmer, I was really lost. I didn't, it was kind of like an identity crisis in a way, and I didn't know what to do. So, in painting, I thought I had found, you know, myself again and something that was familiar. But when I came to weaving, it really just clicked and it made sense and it felt so right to me. It was like something I had already known. So, a lot of the aspects of weaving are like the sport of swimming and being in the water and, you know, swimming down a lane or throwing a shuttle across a weft, across as a weft. They're it's not I'm not surprised that I landed here because they have so much in common.
So if you went back to painting, for some reason you had to, whether you choose to or you had to, but you decided that you're just going to paint now, how do you think your work would be different than before you started weaving? If I-
Oh, like if I had used all of my what I know in weaving came
Well,
into
let's
painting?
say if you've never started weaving, do you think your painting would be
Oh.
different than if you had gone back now that you have been weaving?
I don't yeah, I think I wouldn't be using technology. Um,
Oh, okay.
yeah, I think that the overall energy of the work would be the same, but I wouldn't have, I don't know that I would have found the grid. Um, I think that, I think it would be so different. Um, just, that's a really good question. I really don't know. I mean, I started to tap back into painting. If you saw one of the first couple of slides, watercolors. I've been getting into those lately as just like studies for larger work because they're so quick and it's just they're very intuitive too. And weaving can be too, but to weaving is a lot more labor intensive, as you know. So it's nice to kind of get something done and feel that, you know, immediate kind of satisfaction with a smaller painting and have that inform the larger works and or structures that I'd like to explore because I don't have a digital loom or yeah. And so yeah, I have been doing some painting recently and it's been weird coming back to it because it's like, oh, this was from another era. Like, why am I doing this?
Well, you are multi-talented and you use multimedia. So now for something really different, we're going to look at two more of your works. Now, these are more basket, if I can use that terminology, woven. And I think this is why you were in Norway, right?
Yeah, this was 2 years ago. These these were actually found materials other than the wrapping, that material on the left-hand image. Yeah, these were all found materials in Norway. I was at a residency that I came to with no intention of weaving. I was like, you know what? I need to think outside the box and take a break from weaving. Like I've been doing it for a while now. I'll come back to it. And then turns out they had a loom in their basement. And I was like, oh my God, like I think that I can escape, but I can't. And so I ended up using a loom, but on the side, I was making these little studies while I was working with a loom there. And I mean, I got into wrapping because it was just, there was something really contemplative about the landscape there. It really allowed you to wrap and kind of meditate and think. And it just was a quiet place.
Oh, no. I hope we haven't lost her again. I love Liz has said something. Liz Adams has put something in the chat about getting ideas. And isn't that true? You see these artists and they try these new things and it's like, oh, I wonder if I could do that. I wonder if I could add that into my work. And I was thinking the same thing about this. This would be interesting to try to add something different into my weaving. So, Mandy, are we trying to get her back?
We are. Stand by.
Thank you. I also think it's interesting. I mean, how many artists have we had that started here in this modality and then went to another modality? I know when I was in college, you had to do 4 different ones: painting, drawing, whatever. And like she said, once I started weaving, that's all I wanted to do. But I think all those other things give you some kind of input, a new way of looking at things. So I think it's interesting that so many artists start with painting or printing, and then they end up doing weaving. We bring them from the dark side into the light of weaving, especially crocheters and knitters. We bring them over. So I just saw that somebody said there's horrible storms in Ohio. So that might be from the hurricane that's coming through again. One of the things I do want to ask her about is the scholarships that she has and grants that she has awarded. So let me do a plug while I'm waiting, is that, we have scholarships through HGA, and at times people don't apply for them. And I wish you would look into that. There's a variety of grants and scholarships that you can apply for. You can take workshops. You can, one is pay it forward. If you're doing a program where you think you're paying it forward, you're starting a program, you're reaching out to the community to teach weaving or some kind of fiber. That's one great one. We have 2 others that you can take workshops, as long as it's not convergence. And take a class in something that you will always want to take. Next summer, we've got all the regionals doing their conferences. So you might want to look at that. It's a great money to help you do what you want. And it's not that hard to apply. So go online to our website at weavespendie.org and check out the different scholarships and grants that are available. And it may be something that you would, you'll get to do and, take you in a new direction of products and weaving and modalities. Now, one of hers took her to Japan. I don't know if ours will take you to Japan or Norway, but you never can tell. It will pay for a class or a conference. That would be awesome. So we're still waiting. If you've joined us and wonder why I'm sitting here babbling, it's because we've lost our speaker because of storms. She keeps losing her electricity, and her, I think her phone went out too. So we're waiting to see if we can get her. Oh, looks like she's back again. Yay.
I'm so sorry.
Not your fault. I'm glad you keep coming back. I did a plug while you were gone for scholarships and grants, because you've gotten several, right? So how have they impacted your work or your life?
Oh, wow. Yeah. I mean, they've allowed me to travel internationally, some of the more recent ones, and just explore other landscapes that have impacted my work. Like 2 years ago, I went to Norway. I was originally applying to a Fulbright scholarship, and I didn't end up getting it. And I was like, well, you know what? I'm still gonna go. And I found a way to get there, and I did get it funded partially. But I was just really kind of stubborn about it, and I was able to and it was a privilege to go. It really was, because I was there for 3 months, and it turned my world, it totally changed, just the way that I look at, weaving. I learned new techniques. I learned a lot about, the digital loom. I knew that it totally solidified the fact that I was going to stick with this, this medium, and grad school did too, for sure. But
Now, did you have access to a TC2 at Kent or at Akron?
Yeah, Kent, I did. I learned from Lesma Moss. She's my mentor, and yeah, she taught me how to do that and also how to paint warps. So it was really special to have learned from her during her career too.
And that's why you went to Norway, to see more of the TC2?
Yeah, I wanted to learn more. I also wanted to meet, other, the inventor of this loom, and just to connect with other artists that were interested in the same things as me, and to take upon residencies that were new, and just to travel to a new landscape and a new culture, and to totally immerse myself within that. I mean, it was really amazing to go to those places and to weave in those places too. So it was really special.
Now you went to Japan too, right?
Yeah, I went to Japan. That was my first residency. And I didn't weave. Well, it's funny. I was like, I'm not going to weave here. I'm just going to draw. And it turns out they had a loom in their base. I was like, oh my gosh. I ended up weaving a little bit there, but it was more like found object stuff, like that first residency that you had pictures of from Norway. So yeah, it was a unique experience for me to be able to travel and to weave and to work and on pieces, and that definitely helped my growth as a weaver for sure.
So what's next for you?
I am, yeah, I'm actually looking to get my own loom. I would love to get my own TC2 loom next year. I'm hoping to order one in the spring. So really making efforts towards planning for that, like getting a new studio that has better internet and and I've been thinking about opening up my own space that gives more access to this tool. So potentially starting a business that emphasizes, community open access. There's a space that I went to out in Chicago recently that has a community kind of oriented space for weavers, specifically digital weavers. And I'd love to do something similar to that. So I'm kind of looking at their model a little bit, and potentially starting my own in Cleveland. So we'll see what happens.
Well, here we go with the TC2. There you go, right? There it is in its monstrous glory.
Yes.
And so this is a more recent work for you, right?
Yeah. Actually, that was Chicago, what I was just talking about.
Okay.
Loom Room, which is a community weaving space out in Chicago. You can rent time on their loom. We worked collaboratively on a project to make a 24-foot or 24-yard warp, painted warp, which I had never done before. It was 60 EPI. It was absolutely insane. But these were the pieces that I made on it. And I also got other artists to weave on this warp that I had painted. So it was kind of the first collaborative weaving, like painted warp project that I had ever done and that they had ever done. And these are works that I had made. They're actually works that I'm completing right now that are in process for an upcoming show in December at Akron Train. So I don't know why I make such big, I think it relates to my body because I'm so tall. I'm like 6'2". So I just love the scale of big weavings. Like they do something for me that small weavings really don't. They're almost more intimate for me personally. So yeah, I love large work.
Now tell me the name of the place in Chicago that you went. I think you broke up. I couldn't hear it.
Oh, Loom Room in Chicago is where I made these things. Yeah.
Would you do the same thing if you got a loom that you would open it up to people to have time on it and come work or do an internship?
Oh my gosh. Totally. Yeah, I would love that. I would love to do like a loom rental process, collaborative projects with artists that aren't just weavers, but, sculptors, people that can bring new skills or new perspectives or just approaches to the TC2 loom, to kind of expand that. I think that would be really exciting to see other people get more access to this, that aren't, your traditional weavers, but also, non-traditional kind of just any artist, I think should be able to access this, because it's really only in institutions, and it's
Yeah.
yeah, something that I think should be more open to the public.
Yeah, somebody just talked about praxis that you can do in residency up there. And a friend of mine from my guild here in Atlanta just finished 2 weeks up there. And I cannot wait to have a meeting and see what he made and just live vicariously through his
Thanks.
experience. So that's wonderful
Yeah,
that you want to
yeah,
do that. That's wonderful.
yeah, it would, we'll see what happens, but that's kind of the next thing, I
Well,
think.
we have questions. Let's see if we can do, we're not
Mhm.
going to get to all of them, but let's get to a few of them, okay? All right,
Yeah.
this one we already answered. Oh yeah, we answered about the 1 or 2 layers. Oh, people want to know, were people in your family art doers, art related makers?
Yeah, I think my dad should have been an interior designer, honestly.
really?
But he actually went into business, but him and my mother also does a lot of like craft, like wreath making. She's amazing at that. And there was like graphic design, I think, on my mom's side of the family. Her dad, my grandfather, and my grandma was a knitter. So, and I was around her a lot in Akron. So I think that definitely she introduced like the sewing machine to me yeah. So I do have artists in my family.
Somebody wants to know, this is from Renee. She said, what type of paint do you use on the warp? So do you paint the warps, or you dye the warps, or both?
Yeah, both. So I paint the warps with dye.
Okay.
And the type of dye that I use is pro chemical dye, or Dharma dyes. They're chemical dyes. I like the synthetic color that you can achieve with chemical dyes. And I like how quickly you can get that color, versus, like with natural dyes, I know that you can achieve vibrant colors, but just I think it's easier for me to access those colors through chemical dyes. And I also just don't have the patience for using natural dyes.
Well, speaking of patience, Ruth Howe is
Yeah.
asking, and Ruth, this is a good question, and it may not be, this may not be the place to ask it, but how
Yeah.
do you dye 24-yard warps? I mean, I get
That's a great.
overwhelmed trying to do 3. I mean, just physically, how do you do that?
Yeah, that was new to me. That
I bet.
I remember in grad school, I like dyed 11 yards and I was like, oh my gosh, Janice, I'm never gonna do this again. Like, she's like, yeah, don't do, work with smaller yardage. And I was like, okay, I'll work with smaller yardage. And I didn't listen. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do like 16 yards, 20 yards. And I figured out a way to successfully keep the threads organized while you're dyeing on it. And the key is just keeping the threads organized and not like shuffling them around. Don't like rip your hands through them. Keep them on a table flat, and then you use the immersion or submersion, not submersion dyeing, but just you can go on the ProChem website and they show you a handout on how to dye your warp with paints. And I use foam brushes and I let it cure for 20 hours. And then there's a specific rinsing technique that I use where I'm kind of, pushing the water down like this rather than putting everything in the bucket all at once.
Oh,
Don't do that. Like that
yeah,
is like,
I've got some rat's nest
yeah,
right here.
it's
from
really
doing
just,
that.
yeah, just squeezing it out the warp one, at a time and not like dunking it like crazy and shaking all the threads around. Like just try to keep it as organized as possible. And I promise you can dye whatever length that you want. It just takes a lot of time and patience and just hours at the sink. So
Well, did you have 24-yard tables, or did you do it in sections?
I had, so at Loom Room when we did the 24 yards, we had 10 tables. Yeah, it was 10 tables that I brought out from Cleveland, and it was a monster. It was really really pushed my physical limits and just what I thought was possible. Like, I didn't think you could make a warp that long painted. Like, I mean, I was told that it would be difficult. So I was like, well, why would I do that? But I still like to do things that challenge me and are difficult. I don't know why I put myself through that. Yeah.
Well, this is a good question. This is from Renee. Way to go, Renee. This is an excellent question. The part of the weaving at Tidal Path that you cut
Mhm.
off, what did you do with that?
That is actually sitting right behind me on that table, and I'm trying to think about what to do with it because I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so much like wasted wasted weaving. So I'm figuring out what to do with it right now. It is not getting thrown away, but it is still in my studio. But it did teach me a lesson that I carried over into future designs. How can you create a wavy edge without wasting fabric? So if you continue to follow some of my new work on my website or my Instagram, you'll see new things that I'm making where I'm not wasting the other half.
Good question, Renee. I love that
Yeah, that's a
question. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. I think we are going to stop for today. We've gotten through all the questions, and thank you so much for being on here. I can't wait to see what you do next. It's an exciting path. I know it will be.
Thank you so much for the interview and for the sponsor and all of you for joining today.
If you want to learn more about
I
Meagan, go to
appreciate it.
meagansmithstudio.com. You can see more of her work and all the things that she's up to these days. So wonderful website, just gorgeous work. So go check that out. We do want to thank our sponsor. Thank you, Myrna Lindstrom, for being our sponsor today. Had a little rough going there. We appreciate you being there and sponsoring Textiles and Tea. And if you would like to sponsor an episode or your guild, we've got a guild who's going to sponsor soon because they're celebrating an anniversary, or a group of you who get together and weave and you want to sponsor somebody, whoever you want to do, just let me know. You can go online to weavespindye.org and you can purchase a sponsorship. If you have questions, you can give us a call and we'll be glad to talk to you with that. We've got, like I said, we've got Spinning and Weaving Week coming up. It's October 7th through the 13th. You've heard me talk about this. Tons of stuff to do in the course of a week, and you can do it on your own time. I know some of us who work, we can't do that stuff during the day, but you can watch it later at night, over the weekend, whatever you want to do. And we need people for the fashion show. I know you all are out there making things. Don't tell me you're not. We want people on our fashion show. This one is just as good and as important as the one at Convergence. So start pulling out those things, those scarves, those dish towels, the, Afghans, anything that you're making. We want to see those. So be sure you join our fashion show. It's going to be on, I believe, Sunday, if I'm not lying. It's either Saturday or Sunday. I'm sorry. But come join us. It's fun. And you don't have to really do anything. You just hold it up and show off what you've got. We'd appreciate it. We also want to encourage you all to keep the support coming. We appreciate all of you who join HGA. By joining, you're supporting this organization. I know a lot of people say, what do I get from my membership? But there's also the whole issue of what do you give with your membership? That your money for your membership and donations go to a lot of programs. Interns at Convergence, if you met them, they were a delight. We do that through your donations through HGA, and we really do appreciate it. If you want to join or donate, you can go to weavespindye.org. We have got a great week coming up. Hopefully all the storms will pass, and next Tuesday we won't have any of these problems. But next week we've got Annika Prather. She's an interesting woman. Fascinating woman. I'm excited to talk with her. And fiber is an important part of her life. Even though she may not consider herself mainly a fiber person, it plays a great role in her life. And I hope you'll join us, and I want to hear what she has to say about it. So have a great week. Thank you all so much for bearing with us today, and happy tea.